Hello folks, welcome to the channel elchanojose. Today we're going to give you an idea how I do my maintenance or my oil change on my 93 Toyota Tercel. This applies for a 91 to a 94. And pretty simple, if you're doing an oil change every 3,000 miles with conventional, that's great. And with synthetic, full synthetic, I do it every 5,000 miles. People tend to do it every 8,000. I don't go that far. I spend a little bit more money, but I make my engine last longer. I have my oil, my filter, a towel for any oil that spills around, my container where I'm gonna catch the oil, and we're gonna be using a 14mm socket to take the drain point out. And one thing I want to say, folks, if you want to do any sort of a drain point, gonna take any liquid out of your car, make sure that the point where you're gonna fill up first comes off first before you start taking the drain point out, because sometimes the fill up point will not come off and you already have taken out the drain point, and now you got a big issue and you cannot run a transmission, especially with no oil, when you want to do you want to change oils. But that's a different topic. On this one, we're going to be taking out the drain point or filter, and we're going to put our new filter in there and our new oil, and then with that said, well, let's get started. And as you can see, folks, I have my car lifted from one end just a little bit, so the slope, the oil is going to travel to the lowest point, which is the passenger side, and that's where the drain point is. So what I do, that's going to help me also to get underneath and then loosen the drain point. And once I get it all loose and open, then I start draining my oil. I come over and I lower my car, and then I let my oil to drain. So then I just go back in there and put my drain point back on, and then I drag my oil pan out. So that's just for a beginning purpose for me. I don't want to drag myself underneath the car, so I'm gonna be using a creeper. So that's why I'm using this creeper, and we're gonna be using that for dragging ourselves to get the 14mm socket into the drain point. And for those folks that they have never done the oil change on your little Tercel or your Toyota, the drain point is right on the passenger side. This is the exhaust coming from the above of the engine coming down, and your drain point is right here, and it requires a 14mm socket to take that out. So we're gonna loosen, and then we're gonna fit our drain point here once we get it just to loose. So we take it off and then drain it. And well, folks, in the meantime that the oil drains out, I want to explain something or give you guys an advice. I don't do and I don't believe in engine flush, where you get all the oil out and you put all these oils in and then flush the engine. It's not needed if you change your oil every as recommended. So if you change your oil every 3,000, 5,000, or 6,000 miles, so depends on the manufacturer recommendation, you shouldn't be needing those oil flushes or engine flushes. I don't do engine flush, and I don't change transmission oils, because the transmissions, once you get so many miles into it, if you don't take it to the dealer on the recommended time, then don't do it at home, because then you're going to end up with a headache. So for me, I just do the basic oil change, and then I never had any issues where I need to do engine flush. You shouldn't need to do that, but that's if you change your oil as required. Then with that said, let's get all the stuff ready so we can put the drain point back on and the oil into the engine. So now I have lowered my car and it's even to the ground, and then what I'm gonna be doing, I'm gonna put my drain point on, and then I'm gonna tighten it, and then I'm gonna slide the oil pan towards where the filter is gonna let the other oil out, and it's gonna catch it into the oil pan. So now we're moving on to the filter. So right where the filter is, this is where the location of where the oil pan I have set it up at. And then once I undo my filter, the oil from the filter is gonna drain down to that point. So that's why I wanted to drain the engine first and then the filter now. So I have put the plug back in and the drain point and tightening it, and now I have moved over to the filter so I don't have 2 points draining at the same time. You want to capture 1 point at a time. As you can see, I was able to loosen it by hand. I didn't need a special tool because I tightened it by hand as well. So the oil is draining down to the oil pan. So one thing I did is I cleaned around the filter where the filter is gonna sit, and that right where it drained down. So that way you can get a visual inspection of how the surface is. And once you put the filter back on, you get a clean surface. And also, I don't like to leave oil around the engine because it's gonna start smelling like a burnt oil once the engine starts heating up, and then that's gonna create you questions of what's going on. So clean it around so that doesn't smell like burnt oil or a leak has happened. So that way you know that that's not a problem. Something else could be wrong. So one thing you want to do when you got your new filter, you take it out of the package, and what you want to do is you get some oil and a cap, or from that old oil, you just want to rub it on the O-ring. So when you slide it when you start screwing it on into the block, it slides nice and smooth and it doesn't damage itself. So what I do, once you get it to the block all the way threaded, what I do, I spin it by hand, and I just tighten it by hand and leave it, and that should be good. And one thing I do, I put these magnets, the square magnets, I put them on the bottom of the filter, so the heaviest particles of metal get stuck to the wall, or to the wall of the filter. And that way when I take the filter off, all those particles that were swimming around the engine, they get stuck into the filter and they don't make it back to the engine, because those magnets will keep it here until you take the filter off. And what I'm using this Kirkland brand full synthetic 530 weight. So 1030, 530, that's okay if your car doesn't burn any oil. So now we're gonna be using about 4.5 quarts, but we always wanna go by the reference of our dipstick. So we add the oil to the engine now. So now that we have had a good amount of oil, so we take our dipstick out and we measure and we see where the mark is, if it needs more or if we're in a good spot. So we'll see. So we're about just above half. So now what I like to be is almost to full, because right now I haven't turned on the car, so I don't have any oil in the filter, so that's gonna take some oil off of the engine. So we gotta take that in consideration as well. And if the bigger oil filter, the more oil it takes, so we'd add more oil. So now that we have added the oil, we do another measurement, and we are right about full. So we're gonna turn on the engine, and that's gonna circulate most of the oil, and we're gonna be in the right groove. Well, folks, this is an idea how we do the oil change on our little Toyota Tercel, and this car took about 4.5 quarts of oil, depends on the level where you want to have it. And we did our oil change at 5,000 miles because we're using synthetic oil. So if we use conventional, we'll do it at 3,000 miles, and we don't do engine flushes because we just don't do it, because we keep the maintenance up to date on the car. So we change the oil and we change the oil filter as well. So with that said, also the next part on this maintenance is to get rid of the oil, and we do it by taking it to an auto parts where they recycle it and they dispose it the right way. So we recycle the oil, and that's a very important part once you get it out of the engine. So with that said, folks, if you like this video, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here on el canal Elchanojose.